Sorry, Andor, Star Trek. Picard did Bix's ending 2 years ago and better. When Andor premiered in 2022, it was hailed as the most grounded and emotionally resonant Star Wars project since the original trilogy. Its grit, slow burn political intrigue, and willingness to depict the cost of rebellion set it apart. One of the show's most compelling storylines involved Bix Colleen, Cassian Andor's close friend and ally, whose fate after Imperial torture became one of the darkest arcs in recent Star Wars. But here's the twist: 2 years before Bix's chilling finale, Star Trek, Picard Season 1 had already explored a strikingly similar arc through the character of Jacob, and it arguably did it better. While Andor deserves credit for pushing the Star Wars brand into unflinching territory, Picard's treatment of Jacob showed the emotional devastation of systemic cruelty with far greater precision and emotional punch. The comparison between these two characters might not seem obvious at first, but when you examine the narrative choices, the thematic parallels, and the execution, the overlap becomes clear, and Picard's approach stands out as the sharper, more memorable version. Bix's tragic path in Andor. Bix Colleen starts Andor as one of the most resilient figures in Ferrix. She's resourceful, independent, and emotionally tethered to her community. When she helps Cassian connect with Luth and Rael, she inadvertently sets into motion the chain of events that leads to her capture by the Empire. Her arc takes a horrific turn when she is arrested by Dedra Meero, the chillingly precise ISB officer. Bix is subjected to psychological torture in one of the most disturbing sequences in Star Wars history, forced to listen to the agonized death cries of alien children, weaponized as a sonic assault. By the time Cassian rescues her during the climactic rebellion on Ferrix, Bix is physically alive but emotionally broken. Her once fiery spirit has been dimmed. She's withdrawn, dependent, and visibly traumatized. Bix's ending, at least for Season 1, is survival without triumph, an embodiment of what the Empire leaves behind even when it doesn't kill. It's effective, haunting, and deeply human. Yet it stops short of being transformative, both for the character and the story at large. Bix's survival leaves her open to return in Season 2, but her arc functions more as a symbol of Imperial cruelty than as a completed narrative. Icheb's brutal end in Star Trek. Picard. Now compare that to Star Trek, Picard. In the second episode of Season 1, Maps and Legends, the series reintroduces Jacob, a beloved supporting character from Star Trek, Voyager. Once a Borg child liberated by 7 of 9, Jacob grew into a Starfleet officer and was, for many fans, a symbol of the hope that life after assimilation was possible. But Picard wastes no time in shattering that hope. We find Jacob in the hands of black market organ harvesters, brutally dissected while still alive to extract Borg implants. The sequence is merciless and difficult to watch, a far cry from the more optimistic tones of Voyager. 7 of 9 discovers him mid-operation. The horror on her face makes the audience feel the weight of what's being lost. Jacob, mutilated and beyond saving, recognizes her and calls her Mom. In a moment as gut-wrenching as it is merciful, 7 grants him a swift death by phaser to end his suffering. It's an astonishingly dark and emotionally potent scene, not just because of its brutality, but because it ties into 7's ongoing arc. Icheb's death becomes a defining wound for her, fueling her distrust of institutions, her rage against exploitation, and her morally gray actions throughout the series. Unlike Bix's suffering, which primarily illustrates the cruelty of the Empire, Icheb's fate reshapes a central protagonist's journey. The parallels between Bix and Jacob. Looking at both arcs side by side, the similarities become undeniable. Both are supporting characters tied to the protagonist. Bix is to Cassian what Jacob was to 7, a tether to humanity, loyalty, and shared history. Both are targeted by oppressive systems. Bix is broken by Imperial interrogation. Jacob is destroyed by a profit-driven syndicate preying on X-Borg. Both end up as shells of their former selves. Bix survives but traumatized. Jacob dies after being mutilated beyond recognition. Both arcs emphasize cruelty over spectacle. Neither is a heroic sacrifice in battle. Instead, their fates highlight how systemic violence crushes the individual. Yet the way these stories conclude separates them and reveals why Picard's version cuts deeper. Why Picard did it better. 1. Narrative impact. Bix's suffering, while tragic, has limited narrative consequences. She's a secondary character whose trauma doesn't significantly alter Cassian's trajectory in Season 1. Cassian is motivated by broader political realities and personal loss, not Bix's state. Her condition adds weight to the oppression of Ferrix, but doesn't reshape the central story. In contrast, Icheb's death is a catalyst for 7 of 9's character arc. It informs her every decision, from her vigilantism to her later choice to stand with Picard. Without Icheb's brutal fate, 7's storyline loses much of its urgency and pain. The narrative ripples outward, touching not just one character but the themes of the entire season. 2. Emotional resonance. Bix's trauma is conveyed through her vacant expressions and withdrawn demeanor after rescue. It's effective but subdued. The audience is meant to imagine the depth of her pain rather than experience it directly. Icheb's death, on the other hand, is visceral. The scene is graphic, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. The recognition between him and 7, punctuated by her mercy killing, sears itself into memory. It's not just sad, it's devastating, a moment that redefines how fans see both characters. 3. Thematic clarity. Andor uses Bix to a theme already prevalent in the series. Rebellion comes at a cost, and survival itself can be a kind of defeat. Her arc is consistent but not groundbreaking. Picard uses Icheb to explore a theme uniquely suited to Star Trek, the exploitation of identity and the commodification of technology. His dismemberment by organ harvesters reflects real-world anxieties about human trafficking, while also deepening the franchise's ongoing dialogue about what it means to reclaim humanity after dehumanization. Thematically, it's richer and more directly tied to the franchise's DNA. 4. Finality versus open-endedness. Bix's story feels unfinished. She's alive, which means there's always the possibility of recovery or redemption in Season 2. That makes her suffering feel more like a narrative checkpoint than a conclusion. Icheb's story is final. His death closes his arc, but opens 7's. There's no coming back, and the weight of that loss hangs over the series. Finality, in this case, gives the moment more gravity. The risk and reward of such endings. Both Andor and Picard took risks by subjecting beloved supporting characters to horrifying fates. For some fans, Icheb's death felt like cruelty for shock value, especially given his roots in Voyager. For others, it was a bold storytelling choice that redefined the stakes of Picard. Similarly, Andor risked alienating viewers by showing Bix's broken state without offering catharsis. Yet the show earned praise for refusing to sugarcoat the Empire's brutality. The difference lies in follow-through. Picard used Icheb's death as narrative fuel. Andor used Bix's suffering as atmospheric texture. One rippled forward, the other lingered in place. Why this comparison matters. What's striking is that Picard often gets dismissed as uneven or clumsy in execution, while Andor is celebrated as prestige-level storytelling. Yet when it comes to depicting the devastating consequences of systemic cruelty on 2nd,